now, seaweed tea. I'll have a chat about that now. And great for Eva from Cork as well. Nice to have you join in. And Brenda just down the road. I'm going through all the people, and I'm sorry if I've missed you. I think my neighbour as well, Annie, was watching as well. So and Bernie from Ardra, is that right? And Kevin Montgomery. So it's nice to see you all from all different community gardens that I would have met you as well, and a few new faces. So anyway, right, seaweed tea. We're going to get a wee drink of this tea, but not. What we're going to do now is we're going to make a seaweed tea. And this is not a tea that you drink. So just to make this clear. And I remember a good while ago I was in a community garden and I was standing teaching or facilitating this, making a seaweed tea. And I got the whole way through and everything like that. And it just goes to show you some people just aren't, when they're not listening. And at the very end, somebody says, and do you put milk in it? So I was like, oh, right, okay. No, you don't drink this. And before I start, you do not drink this. Now, a seaweed tea. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can move the camera. I hate the view of the roof there, but what can you do? Right. Okay. By the way, I've had a, just to let you see this is my heated mat. This area here, if I just lift this up, because we have my chilies and some varieties of tomatoes are really going slower than I would have imagined. So we're having to keep them under the heat here. And I have a heated mat sitting on sand, or the sand is on top of it. And then that keeps them nice and cozy. And I keep it covered. So if any of you are thinking about a heated mat to start off vegetables early, maybe for next year, it's probably a bit late. But I made this just out of a simple plastic hook. And we made a frame a few years ago, so it's worked wonders. But I've had to put it back on mid-March. I would be generally having it off by now, having it turned off. So anyway, right, I'm going to show you how you make a seaweed tea. Now, this is seaweed that we had gathered a few weeks ago for this reason. So I'm just going to show you up now. So as you can see, this is some seaweed a few weeks ago, and we've just left it out to weather in the rain, and it started breaking down already. So what I do at this time of year, seaweed tea is like a fertilizing tea that you can use to spray on your crops, and I would spray it on plants that are struggling. So for instance, if my tomatoes were struggling after I plant them up, I would spray them. I'd give them a little spray. It's not really to feed them, but just to maybe help with their condition a bit, just to give them if they're struggling at all. But then generally I wouldn't be feeding them into the soil. I wouldn't put that feed into the soil until they start to flower. So what I'm making at the minute is like a kind of a foliar spray to put over my plants, that if they're struggling for the leaves. You use a lot of foliar spraying in biodynamic. So I kind of came across it from reading about biodynamic gardening and how a spray, or certain elements or minerals are helping protect the plants. So I found that after trying a seaweed spray a few years ago to any little plants that are struggling at this time of year, that this works really well. So what I do is I get a sack, if you've got any potato bags or anything like that, and I just basically put the seaweed into the sack. So I'm just going to do that now. Baraka for plants. Yeah, Baraka, that's it. A multivitamin for plants. And it's very good for them. So when you're dealing with the Hessian bags, just be careful, because I know that a lot of wee fibres come out. So I'm just going to put the seaweed into the bag. Now, it's not smelly at this stage, but it will get very, very smelly. So by putting it into the bag, I find that move this. Sorry. Sorry, right. By putting it into the bag, at least then when it starts to break down, you're not going to be touching it as such, because you don't want this stuff getting on your clothes, and bringing it into the house. And always remember to wash your hands. Well, we're fed up now of washing our hands at this stage, but when you touch this stuff, it's, you know, it's not going to be the most pleasant of smells afterwards, put it like that. So anyway, I'm just putting it into the bag. Now, I've learnt from my mistakes not to put this straight into a spray bottle as such, which I'll show you now what I intend to do. So you've got it in the bag, and we just kind of tie the bag. That's why it's always good to hold on to these bags, isn't it? Now, so we've got our seaweed in the bag, and what you can do is you could get something like a stick and put it across. So you get yourself like a bamboo stick or something like that. Put a little hole in it. Put the hole through the bag. And I think it was Jeff Hamilton that I learnt this from. There's a great garden book, one of my first ever garden books. Jeff Hamilton, just called The Organic Garden, and that's where you learn an awful lot of these old tips and tricks. So if you didn't have a sack, like you can put it under the bucket. The problem being is that over time the seaweed might cap on top of the bucket, and it's just not the nicest thing to get through. So you could also put a kind of, if you wanted, there's other ways to do this. You could put a bit of chicken wire and weigh that down so the seaweed's onto the chicken wire. Or you could put a tap in the bucket itself and kind of just have the seaweed in there. And then maybe put a filter on with the tap. And then when you turn the tap on, the tea comes out. It's just, all of this is a way to minimise you touching the seaweed, because it does get really smelly. Yeah, and Tracy, of course, comfrey tea can be used as well, but I find that at this time of year, comfrey is just not, it's not up enough. It's only starting to poke its head through the ground, so I don't have enough comfrey at this time of year. So I use seaweed. There's Geraldine. Hello, Geraldine. She's my neighbour, my old neighbour from. Not my old neighbour, my neighbour from where I used to live. Good to see you. Yeah, the comfrey, you can use it, but usually the comfrey is then, what I'm trying to make here is a foliar feed. Because what I'm going to do, I fill this with water. I'm going to leave it a week or 10 days. And then I get myself a spray bottle. This is a spray bottle that we just have for that reason. With a whatever the word of that is, a pointer sprayer. Very technical details. So I just, after that's been done, you take out, after 10 days, you take out the sack. The idea then is that all the water in the bucket is now ready to be sprayed. There's enough of the nutrients and the goodness of the seaweed is in that water then. So you would just get yourself a jug or a container, something with a handle if possible, because you really don't want to touch this. And you get the container and you pour it in there into this. This is a pressurized container, but if you don't have one of them, you could reuse a spray bottle at home, just a container spray bottle, because what you're looking to do is to spray this onto the plants themselves, to spray it onto the leaves. And It's just good for given the condition that the plants need to get going at this time of year. So you're not going to completely cover the plants. It's just a quick spray that you would do for certain plants that would be struggling. In the later on in the springtime, if you have to actually feed your plants into the soil, then you could use something like comfrey. And with that, you could use the same process, but you might need more. And then every time you're going to be going and putting that into your container. But we'll cover that as time goes on. You don't need to start liquid feeding your tomatoes and things like that until they start to fruit. Until they start to flower, until they start to flower. And hopefully nobody has got flowering tomatoes at the moment. So we'll cover that as time goes on. So would I use it on seedlings? So basically, Colleen, where I'm looking at, I'll just show you. Right now, for instance, so this is a variety of a tomato that I've got. It started off great. It was fantastic germination, but now it's called the green zebra. Now it's just really started. I don't know why. It's just started to slow down and struggle. Now I have all the other tomatoes moved already down into the potting shed, and they're a lot more advanced than that. So I'll just show you the difference between this little one and that. Okay, so there's no problem with that one. That one's showing good signs of health, where these ones are just struggling. So that's why I'm making this spray, is just to be able to spray onto them as a foliar feed, a light foliar feed. So I wouldn't use it on seedlings in general. I would just use it if they were struggling, and it's a good idea to get them going. Another tip that I tried a couple of years ago was that we were having really bad frost quite late in the year, and my tomatoes were just again struggling. What I did is I put them all on a tray that had the water below, and I put water into the tray. So if I can describe it for you, like this, like a tray, and I put the seedlings, and like that, right? And then I put a little bit of water into the tray, and I cut a bit of willow. Now willow has got a growth hormone that helps with root development, and I found that worked really, really well. So any type of willow, I think it's all got the same growth hormone, and I just cut it. Usually I would use willow water for when I'm taking cuttings. So I thought to myself, well, what this plant needs is to be able to develop its roots. So I just took one stick of willow and I put it into the water, and it seems to bring them around. So I might try that as well. And I'm not sure scientifically if that works, but it worked for me during that time. So generally, on a general rule of thumb, don't use it for seedlings unless you see them struggling. And it's generally at the time that I've potted on and they haven't come around. So that's why I'm making that.